taking your jobs. Like, they should be going back to a traditional lifestyle.
And then, of course, as people have been discussing the so-called manosphere trend, or like kind of this world, a lot of people have then been pointing their fingers at the popularity of Andrew Tate, who is a self-described misogynist, where he's notably celebrated Trump's win by saying he wants to move back to the US and even posting a photo of him as Trump's press secretary. Also cracking jokes about the win, saying things like, "I saw a woman crossing the road today, but I just kept my foot down. Right of way, you no longer have rights." And so now you have people arguing, if the Democrats want to win, they need a liberal Andrew Tate. And I will say, and I'll expand on this in a moment, yes, I think it is true that Democrats probably need to rethink their media strategies, especially as it pertains to the youth vote. But I think all of this, it could also be an oversimplification, with, for example, the likes of Bloomberg showing charts about why young men likely voted how they did, noting that after years of stagnation, median weekly real wages for men aged 21 to 35 rose steadily during Trump's first tenure as president. Also, they're noting that many men entered the workforce under Trump, though there was notably a big pandemic drop, and many did enter again later under Biden. But the association of those original jobs, it was there nonetheless. And this is Bloomberg noted that many men are falling behind in education. And if you look at how demographics vote, the no college degree crowd was much more likely to vote right. So you have places like Bloomberg noting that all this made Trump's rhetoric appealing to young men. But then they also argued that Trump may have made young men feel heard during the campaign, and they did experience some genuine improvements during his administration. But then adding the shifts in the job market are real, and it's not clear Trump's policies will help young men adapt. And so with all of this, there are a number of things at play. If you are someone in this demographic that voted for Trump, I would love to hear your thoughts on why you did it, why you didn't do it. And it can be a specific thing or a general thing. But what I will say is, I don't know if the left needs a liberal Andrew Tate, but I do think that the left needs to get better about going to the public square. What I mean by that is, if you look from independent to right-wing influencers, they have been embraced by the right-wing political machine. You have right-wing politicians that have podcasts. They also go on other people's podcasts. They also embrace podcasters, right? They open the doors and fully embrace the likes of Charlie Kirk, lifted him up. And there's a whole range of these folks. Whereas you see that a lot less from the left. Granted, you do have outliers. You have Bernie Sanders. I mean, it was a big deal when he went on Rogan back in 2019. I mean, he's also a great example. He hopped on Theo Vaughn after Trump. AOC is also very skilled in the space. And, in the lead up to the election, the Harris Walls campaign did some things here and there. But I mean, to give you an anecdotal example, when I went to cover the DNC, there was like this whole official way to try and get access to certain politicians. We got one of the probably, I don't even know how many people we requested. But then separately, even though they told us not to do it, we started reaching out to campaigns, and we got Governor Josh Shapiro. He seemingly understood the value of talking to people in our space. We had to film the thing in some like echoey back room, but he took the time. Whereas with, I guess, likely soon to be former Senator Bob Casey, my team worked to get that interview. We had something set up, and then they just bailed on us. And it genuinely felt like they thought Casey was the get and not the other way around. That he was being given access to an audience of 18 to 35-year-old voters. Right? And understand, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm not saying I'm like some crazy big deal, but I'm saying that there seems to be a disconnect for a number of politicians, and I think it feels like more so on the left that they don't understand the value proposition. You go to where the people are. But yeah, like I said, I'd really love to know your thoughts on this whole story and situation. But then we got to talk about how, while Donald Trump is not president technically yet, his victory alone, as expected, has already thrown a wrench into the criminal cases against him. Because right now you have multiple outlets now reporting that Special Counsel Jack Smith is in active talks with senior leadership at the Justice Department on how to wind down the 2 federal criminal cases against Donald Trump, right? And specifically the ones charging him with trying to overturn the election and hoarding classified documents after leaving office. Right? And I say as expected because this move is coming, because once Trump's in office, he'll be protected from charges thanks to standing DOJ policy that prevents sitting presidents from being prosecuted. And while again, yes, he is not president yet, there's no way that those cases could be resolved before Trump's in the White House. And then regardless, we know that one of his first actions in office would be to have his new attorney general get rid of those cases. I mean, he even said himself that he would fire Jack Smith within 2 seconds of taking office. And all of this, as you have sources saying, this effort to unwind the 2 federal cases is driven by a need to smooth the transition between the administrations and avoid a showdown. Now, as far as what exactly this unwinding is going to look like, that currently remains unclear, but it could get very complicated. I mean, we're talking about something that's completely unprecedented. And as NBC explains, it leaves many questions unanswered, like, could the prosecutions resume after Trump leaves office, or would they be time barred? What happens to the evidence? What about the 2 other defendants charged with helping Trump hide classified documents? Also, will the special counsel write a report, as special counsels usually do? Right? And on that last point, it is possible that even with the unwinding, Smith could still have time to finish his reports on the 2 cases before Trump assumes office and presumably fired him. And that would definitely be notable because Attorney General Merrick Garland has implied that he would make those reports public. And while no, there wouldn't be any legal ramifications there, it would kind of be a big middle finger to Trump. But then, notably beyond all that, the Mar-a-Lago documents case, right, that also poses a unique challenge, right? Because that case was technically thrown out by a Trump-appointed judge who bucked decades of legal precedent and ruled that special counsel Smith had been appointed illegally because his appointment wasn't approved by the Senate. Now there, we saw Smith appeal that decision, but Justice Department officials have worried that the judge's ruling could jeopardize any federal prosecutor or even any senior official serving in a temporary position and thus wasn't approved by the Senate. And so as a result, there are serious sweeping concerns about what would happen if the appeal is dropped and the judge's decision is left unchallenged. But then also, it's not just the federal cases that have been upended simply by Trump winning, because the sentencing for his criminal conviction in New York over the hush money payments that he made to Stormy Daniels, that's now in jeopardy as well. With Trump technically still currently scheduled to appear on November 26 to receive a sentence for his conviction on 34 counts of falsifying business records. So the key thing there is it's now widely expected that his lawyers will use his recent victory to try and disrupt the case from a few different angles. One option that sources say his lawyers are working on is to have the case thrown out altogether on the grounds that as president-elect, he has the same constitutional protections as a sitting president, which would mean that he's protected from sentencing by state prosecutors. But then, even if the judge dismisses that argument, Trump's attorney could appeal to a higher court and seek to delay sentencing further while they do. And that's in no way their only option for delaying sentencing. Another route that they're all but certain to take is to postpone the sentencing indefinitely on the grounds that he's too busy getting ready to assume office to stand for sentencing or other court procedures. And again, these are just a few. There are a bunch of different maneuvers and appeals that his team can take based on various different legal outcomes. And so really what we're looking at is Trump's not going to face any accountability for his crimes in New York before he takes office and gets sweeping immunity. And then even if he somehow did one day, it would be years from now after he leaves office, which is definitely a thing he is going to do. That's what I keep telling myself. Despite all the memes that people are throwing out there that the Republicans are going to make it so that a person can run for president a third time, which would then lead to the Super Bowl of campaigns of a Donald Trump versus Barack Obama. But then, to take a quick break from the news for a second, I can't tell you how freeing it is to just step right into a puddle without a second thought. Because I'm not about to let rain or puddles slow me down. I got stuff to do. And that is where our longtime sponsor, Vessi waterproof sneakers come in. The waterproof tech keeps my feet warm and dry no matter what the weather's doing. And there's just something awesome about saying yes to the elements instead of planning around them. And comfort-wise, these shoes are insanely good. I mean, for me, they were comfortable right out of the box, no break-in period, just pure comfort. And the real highlight is that they don't look like your typical waterproof shoe. I could wear them to dinner, on errands, or even out with friends, and they look great. And pretty much the fact that I never have to worry about wet socks when wearing my Vessies, it's just, it's the little things. Plus, they go with everything. Jeans, joggers, slacks, pretty much your daily wear. Vessies are just the no-brainer part of my day, which I appreciate. I got too much to think about. So if you're ready to step into comfort, Vessi's early Black Friday sale has select styles for just $99 at Vessi.com/DeFranco. Don't wait, grab yours before they're gone. Vessi.com/DeFranco. But then I want to quickly cover some election updates that we've seen with the House and the Senate. And we'll start with the upper chamber because we now have the official confirmation that Democrat and previous guest of the show, Alyssa Slotkin, has won the open Senate seat in Michigan, with that notably being one of the tightest and most closely watched races this cycle, where she just barely beat her Republican opponent by 0.39%. And her win there is a big deal for a few reasons. First of all, the seat that she was running for had been vacated by a retiring Democrat, making it a prime target for Republicans to flip because Michigan's a swing state. When you're fighting for every vote, it's definitely helpful to have that incumbency advantage, which neither had. And while yes, the Republicans have already won the Senate, keeping the majority as slim as possible is very important for the Democrats. It makes it harder to get things done. Just look at the Democrats' slim majority for the last 2 years. It hasn't worked well for them. But another reason Slotkin's win is so notable is the fact that she won an open seat in a state that Harris lost. Because during an election year, most people usually vote down the ballot. So they'll vote for a senator who's in the same party as whichever presidential candidate that they're voting for. So when the presidential candidate does well in a state, the senator can ride their coattails. But when they do badly, they can also drag others down with them. Now that said, sometimes incumbency can offset that, which can help explain why Senator Tammy Baldwin won her re-election in Wisconsin, even though Harris lost that state as well. And so for Slotkin to win this open seat, that speaks volumes both about her as a candidate and how the people of Michigan feel about Harris. Because not only did Slotkin win her race, her victory means that Democrats have not lost a single statewide race since Trump won the state in 2016, which also makes Harris's loss there especially notable. So the people at the top of the Democratic Party, they better be putting some serious energy into how the campaign went so wrong there, or they should probably have new people at the top of the party. But with that said, let's move on to key House races. Because the House right now is still technically undecided, though the Democrats' path to victory is narrowing. Republicans now have 209 seats to the Democrats' 195 as of recording, with so far both parties managing to flip several key seats. And very notably, there you have Democrats now turning a total of 3 seats previously held by Republicans in New York's 4th, 19th, and 22nd districts. We also saw an incredibly significant and historic flip in Alabama. Yes, that Alabama, with Democrat Shamari Figures beating his Republican challenger, winning the state's 2nd district. Well, Figures technically flipped flip the seat, it's also a bit of a unique case, because the district was actually just redrawn after federal judges forced Alabama to change their map to better represent black voters, which notably is a ruling that the Supreme Court upheld in a shocking landmark decision. Right, and we talked about this before, but a little TLDR because it's interesting. The Alabama GOP had drawn its congressional map, so just one of the state's 7 districts had a black majority, and that despite the fact that almost 1 in 3 voters in Alabama are black. And so under the ruling, the Republican state legislature was directed to redraw the map so at least 2 districts had a majority of black voters or close to it. So after a bunch of bullshit trying to find loopholes and getting around the ruling, the final map was put into place, and that made the 2nd district majority black, with then the voters there electing figures. And his election actually breaks a bunch of different fucked up Alabama records, because despite the fact that a third of the state is black, thanks to years of gerrymandering, he's only now the 4th black